First and foremost, Kris Jenner, thank you so much for doing this podcast. And I'm so happy to see you and to talk to you about an, an issue. I don't know if it's really an issue, but a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. I'm about to become a grandmother for the
Oh
first
my
time.
gosh, congratulations. That is a
Thank you.
very, very exciting and something that I'm sure if you're like me, you look forward to. I mean, I look forward to it my whole adult life and thought, what is that going to feel like? Especially after you have kids and you think this is going to be, generational and exciting. And I'm so happy for you.
I am so thrilled. I mean, was there a scintilla of you, Kris, that when you first became a grandmother, you thought, holy bleep, I'm old enough to be a grandmother?
I had a child at a very early age. I got pregnant when I was 22 and had Courtney when I was 23. So I think being a younger mom for some of my kids and a younger grandmother for all of my grandkids is like you will be. It's really
Not really,
an
but thank
advantage.
you.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that, when I was growing up, didn't you think of grandmas as being kind of older with gray hair, like a different
Of
kind of a
course. I thought about
model?
Granny on the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes. Yes, me too. She was great, by the way. And I thought, oh,
Yeah.
will we ever get that old? But I think what happened to me when I first heard that I was going to be a grandmother, I remember we were filming our show, and Courtney and I were in our store called Smooch at the time, which is no longer there, but we were working. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what is happening? And then I thought, what are they going to call me? You start thinking of what you want your grandmother name to be. Like, are they going to call me grandma like I called my grandmother? Or do I want to pick something? So when Mason was born, my firstborn, who's now 14, he started calling me grandma. And then some other kids, I don't know, maybe it was Kim got pregnant. And then I thought of all these kids running around calling me grandma, grandma, grandma. And I thought, no, 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 we need to change the name. So I, Courtney and I picked my name. I got to choose my name, which is now Lovey.
Which I love, but it makes me think of Thurston Howell the Third's wife on Gilligan's Island. I
That's
relate
true. I
everything to
forgot about
TV
her.
shows from the 70s, apparently.
I forgot. I know. Listen, I watched every episode probably 12 times because we had like three networks in those days. But
Exactly.
I think one of my mom's really good friends was named Lovey. And I just remember when I was a little girl thinking that is the coolest, most beautiful name I'd ever heard. And so that just popped into my mind when Courtney said, pick a name. That's what I picked.
So now all 13 of your grandchildren, by the way, yes, Kris Jenner has 13 grandchildren. Do
Love
they
it.
all call you Lovey now, Kris?
Yes, they do. And their friends call me Lovey. And their friends' call me Lovey. Everybody calls me Lovey. So it's very cute. It's very
That
cute.
that is cute. I recently read an article and I think it was all about baby boomers refusing to be called grandma or granny or grandmother because they just didn't want to deal with those names because they associate it with someone older. And of course, baby boomers, we never want to even think that we've aged. So all these fun names are popping up, and I've been trying to figure out my name. And at first, I was going to be Gigi because my sister's Kiki. My late husband has a sister named KK. So I was like, well, I can't use either of those. Then I thought Gigi. Then I realized everybody's Gigi. And then, not to name drop, but I was talking to Tori Birch at a party, and I
Right.
said, she has some step grandkids. And I said, what do they call you? And she said, they call me Go Go. And I said, that's really cute.
That
So
is
I had a
cute.
sweater made that said Gigi by my friends at Lingua Franca. You know, they do those scripts on cashmere sweaters. And I
Yes.
asked my friend Rachel, I said, can you replace the I's with O's? So now I'm thinking about Go Go, but then some people are like, that's so dumb. I have a friend who said, I hate that name. So I think you just have to pick one and embrace it and if, make it your own.
Well, I also think I mean, I had to think about, because I have so many kids, I had to think about, okay, a lot of kids potentially will be calling me this. So you might, be hearing it all the time. So it's got to be something that you really, really like. Do you have a nickname besides Katie?
Not really. I mean, Katie is such a nickname.
Yeah.
Some people call me Couric, my husband. Some people call me KC. So I could be Casey, I guess. I don't know. I just don't know. I'm very confused. Or oftentimes, like the child himself or herself ends up kind of naming you. I
Hmm.
have a
Hmm.
friend whose husband, who's got a lot of grandchildren like you, Barbara Androconis. Hey, Barbara. And her husband is called Beep Beep because when he was pushing his grandchild around on a little plastic truck, she kept saying, "Hey, Beep Beep, hey, Beep Beep." So that name stuck. So we'll see what happens, but I'm
Yeah.
very excited about it. And Lovey, maybe I'll
Fun.
steal Lovey, Kris.
You could steal Lovey. Be my guest. It would be my pleasure. Lovey's a great.
Anyway, I
Anyway.
wanted to talk. I wanted to talk to you also just about your phenomenal success, your work, kind of your upbringing, which I've learned a lot about since I knew I was going to be doing this podcast. But I did read that you wanted to be a mom from a very, very early age, which makes me think you had a really happy childhood and a wonderful mom. And I always feel like people who have great parents are so lucky because it does set you on a
Yeah,
path for the rest of your life. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. I know you worked at your grandmother's candle shop and
I
you
did.
kind of developed your work ethic there, but why was your maternal instinct so incredibly strong at a very early age?
I just loved small kids, first of all. I don't know why. I've always been drawn to children and kids and did have a very, very happy upbringing and childhood. And I felt like because my parents, my mom was divorced, so I had my stepdad when I was about 13. And I always wished that I had an even bigger family. For some reason, one sibling was just not enough. So I always dreamed about a huge, big family sitting around a family dinner on Sundays. And, I had this fantasy in my head. Who knows what happens to us when we're that age? But by the time I was 16, I knew that I really wanted to have 6 kids. That was my number. And I know this sounds nuts, but I remember driving from my grandmother's store, my mother's store. They both had stores in La Jolla, and I was working for both of them by the time I was 16 and going back and forth. And I remember driving home. And as I was crossing this one little bridge in part of La Jolla going onto the freeway, I thought, okay, I think I need to have 6 kids because on Christmas Eve, I want a big group drinking hot chocolate, sitting around the fireplace, you know, talking about Santa. I don't know. I had these fabulous fantasies, and I thought, I'm really going to have a big family and have all these family moments and celebrate every single occasion I can possibly dream up.
I'm curious too about you as a career woman. We're about the same age, and I
Uh-huh.
think we represent almost a transition from women in more traditional roles as, what my mom did. My mom volunteered for Planned Parenthood and worked in the gift department of Lord and Taylor, but she really didn't
Oh,
have
wow.
a career.
Mhm.
And then my older sisters and I, and my brother, obviously, but we really wanted careers. And your first job, I guess, was at a flight as a flight attendant for American Airlines. And when you were growing up and coming of age, this was also right in the midst of second wave feminism. Was a career something that you wanted? Because initially you were a very traditional person, right?
Yeah. Well, my first job was actually working in the corner donut shop up the street from my house when I was
Oh, that
about.
would be very dangerous for me,
Yeah,
Kris.
well, it was. And my job was early in the morning before school. I would take the scraper on a long stick and I would scrape the glaze off of the floor from the day before.
Oh, God.
And they would the night
How
before.
glamorous.
And they would, oh, yeah, I made it look good. Trust me. And they would make the donuts, late in the middle of the night, and then I'd come in and be part of the cleanup crew and then go to school on the bus um, in Claremont. And I just remember all of then after that I was still working for my grandmother and my mom. And then I became an airline stewardess for American Airlines. And then from there I got married and I got pregnant on my honeymoon. So, it was time to go raise a family. So that's kind of, I think the entrepreneurial part, I had so many chapters in my life that led up to being 52 years old and creating our reality show for me and my family. And I think that that's what's remarkable is it kind of like being a mom, raising all these children and having all these jobs and I never wanted to stop. It was just the work ethic came from my mom and my grandmother and, being able to work. But I just always assumed because my role models that's what they did. They had careers and they loved what they did. And I never thought for a second, I always enjoyed what I was doing. So I always, had a great attitude about going to work. And I couldn't wait to go be a stewardess. And now they call it a flight attendant. Very
Yeah,
proper.
right.
But
And
in those days, it was a stewardess. And I could not wait to be a career girl and do something that was professional like that. And that was a big, big step for me. And from there, it just kept bleeding into other things. But I think my role as a mom was a huge um, uh, career building chapter of my life, even though I didn't realize it at the time, because it just prepared me for everything else.
how so? How did your role as a mom? And then I want to talk about some of your failures because I think people see you, Kris, and they're like, she's brilliant, she's a genius. And I think you're very open about
I
the
have
fact
lots of
that
failures.
not every idea, worked. And
Right.
people always talk about the huge
Right.
successes, but not the whiffs and the failures. So let me
Right.
start by asking what skills you really gleaned from being a mom in terms of running a business, and then
Right.
we'll talk about things that
Yeah.
didn't work.
Well, I think work ethic is something that you really have to learn and have experience from. You can teach it in a way, but I think to have the hands-on experience of just learning, things from scheduling and from organizational skills and from multitasking and from, when I was a flight attendant, it wasn't, you just don't show up on an airplane and, willy-nilly start, pouring cups of coffee. You have to go to a flight attendant school in Dallas for weeks and weeks and learn how to do what it is that, their menu of things that they want to teach you. But it's also about having responsibility, being somewhere on time, learning how to save lives if there's an emergency.
Right?
And
It's
it was
pretty serious business, really.
yeah, and it's keeping a really crazy schedule. One of the things that I love to tell my kids is when I was a flight attendant, we would, get up at whatever, it was crazy hours and flying around the world. But the minute that it was so long ago that the minute the plane took off, every single person, the little light on the plane above your seat would go off, and it was the smoking light. And if the light went off, meant you could start smoking. And
I know, isn't
every
that
single
crazy?
person on the plane, including every flight attendant, would light up and you just see the whole. And now to think about that now, it makes my skin crawl. It was just
Right?
like everyone would light up and you would just be sitting there in a big, you know, cabin,
And then Kris, they had the smoking section, which was such a joke.
right? Two
The
rows,
seats from the
two
middle
rows
to the back
sometimes.
of the
Yeah,
plane, and it's
yeah,
like, seriously?
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it was just when I think back on some of the experiences I've had in my life and just where kind of the jobs and then the flight attendant. But then mom, I think, was my most important job, but it was also something where I learned everything that I talk about today is probably based on from the consumer behavior to how to give a birthday party to taking care of children, first aid 101, education, you know, just so much. It's just so many things about raising a family that prepares you for yet another chapter or another lifetime. And I think that when you learn how to navigate um, the problems and the challenges and the joy of raising a family, you learn how to navigate a lot of other things that you're not even aware of until they happen. It's really hard
And
to
I think,
explain.
yeah, and I think that the responsibilities of being a mother, really being the CEO of a household, are often undervalued in the business world because you also learn how to make decisions, things like time management. You
Hmm.
know, you
Hmm.
have to figure out how to be collaborative because you're collaborating with a bunch of kids. So
Well,
sometimes I
that's
think
so
that
true.
people, you
So
know,
true. Well, I was like a drill sergeant, basically. I mean, there was really no negotiation with my timeline. So it's like you woke up at this time, you had, you got dressed, you went downstairs, you got your homework ready, put it into your thing, had your breakfast, got in the car, we all drove to school. It just there was a schedule and it was very tightly followed at all times. Chloe's very much like I am, or I was when I was that
very,
age. She's very, yeah, oh yeah, you better believe it. Chop Chop was
yeah,
was my middle name. So, I great importance that I really stressed on sticking to a schedule. And I think I learned that, and then I took that into the next chapter of my life. But I also had the great advantage of my husband Robert, who surrounded himself and was in this world of executives and figureheads and studio heads, and I would sit in and even if I was just listening or in the next room, almost through like osmosis, you know be in on all these business meetings for almost 2 decades.
right,
So when you learn, you sit in on meetings, you happen to be on a business trip, where everyone's talking business. Sometimes you're, half in the conversation or you're talking to one of the girls that would happen to be at the table, but I'm always listening with two ears. So it was just fascinating for me to be a mom during the day, put my kids to bed, and then so we were, everyone was socializing in the 80s, and 70s,
right.
and Monday nights would be Morton's, everybody would go to Morton's restaurant, and it was just these wonderful opportunities that would pop up, and I was lucky enough to be a part of them and to be and had a very privileged life of being able to meet and get to know people that were very successful, and I think
Right.
that
And I
you
should
absorb
mention, by
that.
the way, yeah, I should mention, Kris, that your husband, Robert Kardashian, I know you all split up in 1991, but he
Mhm.
was a very high powered, I guess, entertainment lawyer, right?
Mhm. It was yeah, it was yes, an entertainment lawyer. That's correct.
And of course
Entertainment and business.
I met him during the OJ trial, and my husband, who was covering the OJ trial, met him, and he was just a very, very nice person. He was so sort of very low key and understated.
Hmm.
But I think he became kind of a household name actually during the O.J. Simpson trial. So that was just sort of interesting. And then before we talk about sort of your time as a single mom, well, this might actually intersect with that. But you have said you came up with all these ideas, and a lot of them didn't work. You mentioned the shop that you all had that is no longer there. I'm curious if you can just go back and tell us some of the ideas you had before you were in your early 50s and things blew up for you and your kids.
Well, I started after I got divorced, and you kind of realize that you want to have some sort of financial independence and you want to be able to take care of your kids and give them, the life that they were all going to private school and they were all, we had a long stretch ahead of us and we the focus was on co-parenting and doing it in the best way possible. But really, I just felt like I really wanted to be financially independent. And there's lots of things that we did over the years. I'm trying to think about some of them. I know that when we launched the stores, Courtney and I decided to kind of follow in my mom's footsteps. And I thought my mom's been so successful with her children's shop in La Jolla. And when I mean successful, I mean just emotionally and, um, just financially, all of it. She was happy. And her and my
Fulfilled by
dad,
that. Yeah.
yeah, she was really, it filled her cup and she really loved what she was doing. And I thought, I love retail so much. And I love children's clothes. I have, at the time, all these kids. And I thought maybe I'll do that. So I told Courtney I was going to start a children's store in Calabasas. And I said, do you want to be my partner? And she immediately said yes. And then later, the girls opened a woman's clothing store next door called Dash. But what happened to Courtney and I was we were doing really well. And when we started the show in 2000, that was in 2004. 2007 came around and we started our show and it got so overwhelming with tourists in our store that nobody was buying anything. They were just coming to
Oh,
check
God.
out what was happening. So we had to close the store. The store that we had, Courtney and I, had a back door. So we would, if it got really crazy, we could go out the back door and have a break or take off. And then people realized that what we were doing. So, it just became a little crazy. So yeah, so that just didn't pan out. And then the show took off. So the rest is kind of history. But the stuff in between, I think we were throwing spaghetti at the wall a lot when we first started our show because we were given so many opportunities suddenly. And we were really trying to connect with an audience who, at the time, there was no Instagram, there was no Snapchat, there was no TikTok. None of those platforms
Right.
were alive. And there was barely Twitter. And so we started, really focusing on I don't know how long this show is going to last, but how can we take advantage of this amazing opportunity and trying to find, I felt like my job as a mom, and I put this on myself. It's not like I read it in some book or anything, but I just decided that what I wanted for myself and my children was to be able to help them identify what they wanted to do with their lives. And, aside from a TV show that who knew what, right now we're filming
Yeah, right. It's
our
pretty unreliable. You never know, but you really
right.
wanted them to find their passion and
Yeah,
transform it into a business, right?
that's right. So that's what I focused on. So that involved a lot of, slapping a bunch of spaghetti on the wall and trying different things. And so I really loved those years in some ways because we grew and we learned and we got smarter because you try new things and you talk to lots and lots and lots of people and it's been a great journey.
I work with my husband, John, at a media company we started about 6 years ago. And, working with your family or combining family and people you love with business can sometimes be a little, I don't know, trying at times. And I'm
Yes, it
curious
can.
how you're able to stay so close as a family, but also when you disagree on business things or you have different styles of getting things done, how
Right.
how problematic or challenging has that been for all of you?
Well, I think the good news is at the end of the day, we love what we do and we do it together. So that's the beauty. I mean, it truly is the best gift I've ever been given. And I got back from doing interviews this morning and I walked into my kitchen and Chloe was here because she lives next door and then we'll work together later this afternoon. And, it's just always, we all live nearby. We all live near each other and we all are connected all day long. I know Kendall was getting on a plane this morning to go do a photo shoot in another city, and I called her, I text her, and all we're talking about is like last night's Bachelor. Like, what'd you think? What do you think about this girl? And, you know, so when we're not, the point is when we're not together, we're still together. So we're kind of obsessed with one another. But as far as the business side of it, there's always going to be disagreements. There's always going to be a difference of opinion, or they're going to be very strong about something that I disagree with. Like I'll say, I need you to do it like this. And they'll say, no, I'm not doing that, but I'll do this. And, so there's always a little bit of a dance. And I thank God every day for when it goes really smoothly. But, with this many people, and it's a lot of incoming. So there's a lot of decision making. And I've just learned to, it takes a village. So I have a great team. And we all have our gift with each other. So I think it's depending on what it is, it's who's going to talk to Kim about this? And then I'll do it, or, somebody
Do you
else.
all ever have big fights, like family feuds, where you don't talk for a few days or you have to cool down? I mean, it can't all be flowers and lollipops and rainbows all the time, right?
The last really big argument I think anybody had was probably Kim and uh, Courtney a couple years ago. But honestly, if we don't agree, we agree or we've resolved it by the end of the day. I don't think there's ever a time when I have ever gone to bed. I feel like they're all my spouses, like we don't go to bed angry. So we resolve things pretty quickly, and we all get on the phone. And Kim is such a great negotiator. She should be seriously a
Well,
professional.
she is going to law school, so maybe she'll do
She's going
more
to
of
be
that.
very good at it
She
because
can be a
she's really great.
mediator.
She is the best mediator. So, when things get really rough, we just all call Kim. Kim will fix it. But, as the mom, everything's my fault. Everything in life is my fault. So, sometimes that's how you feel. And you just have to say, okay, how am I going to deal with this being my fault today? How am I going to fix it? So, but
I
it's great. It's great joy. And that I can honestly say, I feel like the luckiest girl in the world because I get to work with them.
Well, you all have created an unbelievable empire, really. Uh, I is there any part of you that's like, holy cow, how did this happen? Because I mean, we're talking about really extraordinary wealth, Kris, as you know, and if you didn't grow up that way, you know that's something you sort of have to adjust to and becomes a big responsibility, right? And
It is a
did
big
you have any
responsibility.
struggles with that?
I mean, listen, I think with um a lot of greatness comes a lot of responsibility, whether it's greatness in opportunity or financial, or, just being really, we have a big voice. And when you have a lot, we have probably as a family over 1 billion followers. That's Kylie has more people following her than people in the United States. And when you
That's
think about that,
insane.
that's insane. It's really insane. And I think about that and I think, okay, this is a huge responsibility with such a big voice that you have, that you can potentially do hopefully a lot of good. And I think that the girls are very philanthropic. They don't always talk about what they do, but I'm proud of them for all those efforts. And I'm just proud of the way they handle themselves and what they put out there in the world. But what I love most about them is they love to be working. They love to be doing what they do. They love to have their schedule full, and, their meetings and their shoots and their filming, and they're always, looking at other projects and things to do. And I mean, I get their schedules every night and then again every morning because things change. And we're always, if I'm negotiating a deal or putting another business together, and, all of that, I'm working at my office most days and filming my show, and then the girls are working on all their stuff. But it's we organize it and we schedule it. And there's a team of us. There's a business strategist and
Right.
publicists, attorneys, and all of that. So it's a big operation. And I think when you focus on all the positive things that can come out of it, then that's where I'm most comfortable. I feel
You
like really proud of what all of us are doing and how hard the girls are working and how creative they are and the level of expertise that they bring to each thing that they do. And then combined with their work ethic, it's kind of the perfect storm.
Let's talk about your grandkids. So 13 of them. Uh,
Mhm.
just tell me, what is it like being a grandparent? What should I expect?
Well, I think, I always wish I had more time. So I think expect to, I mean, I crave seeing my grandkids. Thank goodness that Chloe lives next door because I know that I'm guaranteed to see those two little dolls every day, hopefully. And if I am inside all day for some reason or running from here to my office, and I'm at my office all day, when I come home, they know that I'm home because we share a driveway and I get to see them. And yesterday I was at Kylie's and I got to see Stormy and Air. And so I go to bed every night thinking, okay, how many kids did I get to see today? That's kind of like my little treat I give myself is just it's like counting sheep. I count grandkids. So, but I think what you have to look forward to is probably some of the best, most delicious years of your life because you get to share, this amazing relationship. And sometimes it's really funny. I have so many, but they go through this period where they aren't as lovey-dovey like at about 18 months as I wish they were. And then all of a sudden, when, 6 months later, they, won't stop, um, calling your name or being right there,
Hugging you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and hugging you like it's the best thing in the world. So I think I really crave the hugs and the conversation now that some of them are, old enough. Rocky, Courtney's baby was just born a couple months ago. But Mason, my oldest, is 14. So, but what I did was I told Mason on his bar mitzvah that I would buy him a car when he was 16 if I felt really confident and I could have proof that he's never done any drugs or alcohol or anything like that. And if he was 16 and we could come and he was, I promise, Levy, I promise. And then, yeah, what happens is my kids keep having kids. So now I have a feeling I'm going to be kind of on the hook for 13 cars
Yeah, I guess
if
so.
nobody does any drugs or alcohol. So that's kind of like you make little deals with them. And I think it's really fun to have a date with some of my grandkids. Like Penelope and I will go to dinner. Or, she likes to they all love to go to Target or you know, Costco or Walmart. They love to go, get some goodies. And so we'll take them shopping or do something fun. They love to go to dinner. And I said to one of my kids the other day, I said, if I took every grandkid out to dinner once a month, that would take up the month. Think about that. I'm like,
But it's so nice that you're able to spend quality time with them as individuals. I hear a lot of my contemporaries saying, don't tell your kids how to parent because, especially with this current generation of parents, I've been told they're much more rigid than we were as parents and that they are very, very on schedule, very specific. Do you ever have conflicts with any of your kids about the way they're parenting theirs?
I always speak my mind. Like if when you feel like making a comment or offering unsolicited advice, I'm sure I annoy them constantly. My kids, not my grandkids, but my kids, because I'm always giving advice or we send things to each other. I send so many things like on DM and I'll send them a reel or I'll send them, some tip I've learned, or did you hear about this has too much sugar in it? And, you
Yeah.
can't eat this, it's poison. So I'm sure my kids think I'm a wackadoodle, but they are very respectful and probably pretend to appreciate my advice. Um,
That's
but
nice because I think it is a
yeah.
source of conflict for a lot of grandparents and their kids. I've been
Oh no,
told.
I'm annoying. I'm annoying to every degree. I just speak my mind. And I'll call them up and go, no, I really don't think. And then, I think my kids are just as verbal. Like Courtney will come over to my kitchen and she'll just take all of my stuff out of my kitchen that isn't healthy to cook in or to store food in. And it's just in the trash can. And I'm like, did you throw all my Tupperware away? And she'll go, yeah, I did. So I'll go, oh, okay.
She's just trying to save you from forever chemicals,
Oh, I
Chris.
know. I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how we are with each other. We do like
Yeah.
so, we're very close family, I guess you could call it.
I wanted to ask you about, I worry about this next generation of children. The world is such a scary place. There's conflict, there's polarization, there's global warming, and, it does feel pretty doom and gloom sometimes. And,
Mhm.
I also think a lot of parents, Chris, are really worried about screen time because I've done a lot of research in this area. I was just on a panel with Meghan Markle at South by Southwest, and she's talked about how cruel social media can be because I mean it's wonderful on one hand, but terrible on the other hand. And I'm curious about two things. One is screen time. Is that something that you all as a family think about? Because it has a lot of negative effects on kids. They're spending all their time looking at phones or iPads and playing games in restaurants. And I think it's making them have not develop social skills, not be able to have conversations, not be outside as much as they used to. Like it feels like life was
Right.
so much easier, Chris, when you and I, because we're I think
Yeah.
an age, we're 1 year apart. When we were growing up, and even my daughter Ellie, who's having the baby, says, "Mom, I wish I grew up in the '70s when there was no social media because it really
Right.
has transformed." The childhood experience for so many kids. So, is it something that you think about with your own grandchildren, especially because you all have built this huge empire really because of social media? So, do you have a slightly, schizophrenic feeling about it?
Listen, I social media is such a, double-edged sword for sure. It's a great business tool. It's a great way to connect with people that you love. It's a great way to look at a fashion show, in Paris last week when all the shows were going on and you could just pick up your phone and go on Instagram and look at the, shows. But then it's got this
And
flip
by the
side.
way, and as a journalist, Chris, I try to use it to give people accurate information to help them understand this
Yeah.
increasingly complex world around us.
Right. You can learn so much, but at the same time, it's so dangerous. And what I get really worried about are my grandchildren, and because they're so young and they're so impressionable, and just the amount of bullying that goes on social media is so tragic for this younger generation. And even us as adults, all
Yes.
the hate on the internet from people that, people have never met before or complete strangers, saying the craziest things about everybody, that you could possibly imagine. So it's just a shame that, we as humans feel like it's okay um, to be that crazy on the internet. I can't imagine going on someone's account or page or going on where they can see something and criticizing or making a horrible statement about
Oh, it's
somebody being
awful. And
cruel. I
people
mean,
don't realize like you're actually there's a human on the other end of
yeah,
those comments.
yeah.
And
So, and
even
even
if
the
you don't look at
suicide
them
rate,
or yes,
the,
oh yes,
the
in fact, I
teenage
know that
suicide.
the suicide rate for young girls has increased, Chris, 167% since 2010.
That's
And experts really point at social media as the causation for that increase. You know, it's not a correlation necessarily, it's actually behind depression and anxiety, especially for young girls. So, how do you help navigate that with your children and your grandchildren? Are they not allowed to use iPhones until they get to a certain age? Is their screen time monitored? How do you teach them to be resilient when people do say such mean, ugly things? I mean, how are you raising a child in the era of modern media and technology?
right. Well, first of all, they have restricted screen time. They don't have phones until they're a certain age.
What
I think
age? Do you mind if I ask you what age?
It's different for every one of my children. They have babysitters that will have a phone if they're obviously if they're out with the kids and have an emergency, things like that. But the kids don't have phones. Mason has a phone. North has a phone. I don't know if she's even allowed to do certain, they're restricted. So, for
Right,
example, I know my granddaughter True has an iPad with some of her favorite cartoons on it. They're very restricted. So they have they're edited so that they're only watching what their moms and dads want them to watch. And there's no real social media on there, obviously, yet. And I don't know at what age they'll be introduced to that, other than Mason and North and P. But the other kids are too young yet. But I know that they like my grandson Saint loves soccer, so he loves to watch. If he's out and about, his mom will turn on a soccer game and appropriate things that are, the moms or the parents let them watch. When I'm with them, we don't even have that. We don't even go on social media or we're not on a phone if we're all out and about. But I think that we just have to be really careful about the appetite that they, create over some of this stuff. And I think a lot of it is habit. So I think we just have to
right.
be really careful and you have to decide within your own family what's appropriate and what's not for, your situation. But for us, you know, it's just, it can be very negative. So you really have to be watchful and create boundaries for your, what's appropriate for your own. I know that I hear my grandkids a lot if they're negotiating with their mom about something.
Hmm.
One of them might say, "Oh, please, can I have some extra screen time?" So they have very limited controlled amounts of screen time. They're allowed to go on and play their games or whatever they're, watching, but it's monitored. But I think with the girls, they try to be good role models and really, be good moms. And I'm really
They're
proud of
lucky to have, I think they're very lucky to have you, because you're clearly, I think, the glue that's holding, I mean, not that
them.
they're not impressive individually, but you're the glue that is holding everyone and everything together, it seems. Just in closing, how many grandchildren do you think you're going to have, Kris, by the time all is said and
Oh,
done?
wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, Kendall will hate me for saying this, but I want Kendall to have one because she's the only one of my kids that doesn't have a child. So that would be really exciting. But I'm trying to think. I think if I were to guess, I don't I think Kim and Courtney might be done. They each have four. That's a lot.
That is a
And
lot.
right?
Gosh.
And Kylie and Chloe have two, and Rob has one, and Kendall has none. So I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine these days.
Your house must be very fun at Christmas time, and I'm really
The
looking
best.
forward
Oh my
personally.
gosh, it's the best. I can't. Do you know, I just started Christmas shopping.
Really?
I did. I finished Easter baskets because
It's
Easter's
March
on the March.
12th, Kris.
I know. And I'm so excited. I can't help myself. It's my favorite time of the year. So I'm just pretending like, it's time.
It
It's
must be very re-energizing and must make you feel like a new person to see life through the eyes of a child. And that's what I'm excited about. And I'm excited about the quality time I get to spend with a little person. I don't have to necessarily, although I want to be helpful. I'm going to be in New York and Ellie's in LA, but just to take a child again and to explore things and learn things and discover things, I think it makes you feel like you're discovering the world all over again. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we don't know whether it's a little boy or a little girl, which is also very exciting. And I know you've got to go, and I want to be so respectful of your
No, I'm
time. But
good. Don't worry.
did you know what your kids were having?
I did. I did.
All of them?
Oh, my own children?
Yeah, did you know? Well,
No,
did you know
no.
what your grandchildren or what your children were going to be?
I did not know what my children were going to be at all until I had Kendall. And when I had Robert, they told me actually, Paul Crane was my OBGYN at the time. And I was in the delivery room and he said, listen, I know you have three girls and I know you really want a boy, but this is probably a girl. My feeling is after that last ultrasound, it's a girl. And so instead of, having a breakdown, because I really wanted a boy, and all the Armenian, people wanted a boy from day one, from Courtney.
Yeah.
They thought Courtney was a boy, then Kimberly and then Chloe. I kept having all these girls. And we started picking out names, and it was St. Patrick's Day. So I said, let's name her Kelly, Kelly Kardashian. And that'll be the little nod to the Irish side of me. And so out came Rob. So we were so excited. And then by the time I got around to having Kendall, they had amniocentesis, and I was older. I was 40, and I was 41 when I had Kylie, and I knew with Kylie. But my grandkids, I think we knew all of them what they were going to be, boys or girls.
I think most people find out now, but it is one of life's last big surprises. So I'm
Yes.
sort of excited that we don't know, and I, for the life of me, cannot figure it out. Everyone's saying, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." And I say to Ellie, "What do you think?" She said, "I have no idea." So it'll be really exciting when the baby's born.
That's so exciting. When is she due?
She's due March 23rd, so pretty
Oh my gosh,
soon.
she could have the baby today.
I know. She's been eating a lot of dates and drinking some kind of raspberry tea and taking lots of walks. But I
Walks.
told her
Yeah,
enjoy these final days because you're going to be very busy and probably have a lot of sleepless nights pretty soon. So
that's right. That's
you
good
don't
advice. That's
rush
good
it.
grandma advice. Well, let me
Yeah.
know what you decide on your name. I'm excited to hear what they're going to call you.
Yeah,
And if
I'm
you want to take
excited
Lovey,
too.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Well, Kris, thank you. And thanks for all the great advice. And thanks for sharing a little bit about your life and your work and your kids. It's fun to have this conversation. I really appreciate you doing the podcast.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun talking to you.